up here. It'll allow me to share the screen. Well, there we go, Microsoft PowerPoint. There we go. Can you guys all see the Love Your Guts? Yeah, did I get a head shake there? Sorry, I missed it. Okay, you can see it. So we're going to talk about loving your guts today and how the gut really is the key to all sorts of health issues and just having, you know, normal bodily function. So what is it, first of all? You know, our gut, go ahead.
We can see your consistency PowerPoint now, not your guts.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me see then if I can. The consistency one, delete. All right. Thank you. Let me see if I can share it again. All right. PowerPoint's up. Try one more time. There we go. Now can you see it? Okay, thank you. So our gut, and you know, all of this, guys, is based on research. So I found it. You guys can find all of this research online about our gut. Can you guys still see it? I just maximized the screen there. Okay, trying to make it a little bit bigger. For some reason, Zoom will not let me do slideshow view. So it's a complex ecosystem. Sorry, Zoom was flashing a warning at me telling me that it was paused. So we have more than 100 trillion organisms living in our gut. And this is made up of bacteria, fungus, viruses. You know, there's good stuff and there's bad stuff. But what I thought was really interesting is that 90% of all of the bacteria we have in our body is actually in our gut. And that bacterial cells outnumber all other human cells 10 to 1. So our body is actually 90% bacterial. And that's why it is such a vital piece of our health. And without them, we actually could not survive. There are 300 times more bacteria just in our gut than there are stars in the entire Milky Way galaxy. I thought that was just crazy and unbelievable, but that's why it controls everything from immunity to mood, and it really is such a big deal. You know, Hippocrates is the father of modern medicine. I love this quote. This is actually from your back office. It's a shareable. It's from Plexus, but he has this famous quote that says, "All disease begins in the gut." And I love that because he was onto something, right? He knew so long ago that the gut was key, but if you ask your doctor, they will tell you this is not something that they learn in med school. They don't research and learn about gut health in medical school, and it's really something that there's tons of new research that's out there that's coming out, and they're finally starting to pay attention to it. And I really think that in the next 5 to 10 years, that's all we're going to hear about is gut health. So I encourage you guys, anything I talk about, I did my research. I encourage you guys to do your own research too. So let's talk though about the role that your gut health plays. You know, you hear us say all the time that it helps so many things, and it really does. It regulates immune function. It prevents toxins and other fungus from inhibiting our bodies. Anything you eat that is not digestible, it's that bacteria that helps break that down. So fibers, all the chemicals we're eating now in our food, that stuff our bodies are not made to digest. So that bacteria helps break that down. It actually produces nutrients. I didn't realize this until I started researching, but vitamin K and vitamin A and some D is actually produced in our gut. But then from all the other nutrients we take in from food and other sources, our gut actually impacts the absorption. So it has a role in whether or not our body is even absorbing those nutrients that we're eating. And it influences hormone production and neurotransmitter production. So you've heard us say that serotonin, the happy hormone, lives in our gut, and it does. Most of those neurotransmitters are housed in that microbiome. So that's why all of these things play a role, and that's why Plexus can help so many health issues. you've seen where, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit, but all of these health issues stem from the role that our gut plays. And when our gut gets out of balance, things get out of whack and all of these different health issues, but it stems from the role that it plays. You know, there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. There's also bacteria called opportunistic bacteria. So just as we go through tonight, we're going to be talking about the good and the bad. The opportunistic is not what we want, but that's the problem. We need good bacteria and bad bacteria together. It's a very delicate balance, though, that really has control on almost everything. And so that balance is crucial. When it's out of balance, if it's too high or too low, it can actually produce toxins and carcinogens or allow those opportunistic bacteria that are just hanging around to come in and multiply. And if you look at the research, it will tell you that opportunistic bacteria, it's been linked to cancers, IBS, Crohn's, all of these things you see on the screen. And it also impacts brain function. So you hear us say like, well, you'll sleep better on the triplex. But a lot of people don't realize that's actually our gut controlling brain functions. So pain sensitivity, our circadian rhythm, which is sleep regulation, mood, even appetite regulation, because all of those are brain functions that are controlled by the brain. I just thought that was really, really interesting. Now, where does it begin? It actually begins in childbirth. So when we're infants and we're in our mother's womb, our gut is sterile. There's no bacteria in there. As the baby goes through the birth canal, it actually swallows its first mouthfuls of bacteria, which begin to inhabit then the gut, and it's no longer sterile. Breastfeeding further increases that bacteria and that microbiome. Now, what I'm not going to get into, you can look it up, all the different types of bacteria. The 5 most beneficial are on the back of the ProBio 5 bottle, but I can't pronounce them, so I'm not going to talk about them. But there's research into where we get them, where they come from, how many of each we need, and it's really interesting. But now a lot of us have had C-sections. We don't breastfeed. That's okay. But like it or not, that's already messing up that gut bacteria, and the research shows that. Now, it does take about 2 years to fully develop the entire biome and get all of the good and the bad stuff that you want. But I thought it was really interesting that, you know, the baby gets that first mouthful. Now, if they don't go through the birth canal, then they get it from other sources, right? They get it the moment their mouths touch other things or they ingest other things. They are picking up that gut bacteria. But it may not be the beneficial ones that necessarily they're supposed to have as soon as we're born. So what throws off the balance of that bacteria? Everything. It is such a fine balance. But C-sections and bottle feeding, but also antibiotics and other medications. I didn't realize that things like dental work can actually throw up. So it's a critical balance. Even though it's developing in those first 2 years of life, we have our whole lives to be throwing it out of whack, making it worse or better. So this is how we know everyone is out of balance. Everyone, well, I can't say everyone has been on an antibiotic. I'd say most people have been on an antibiotic. We are breathing polluted air. People drink alcohol. Even our soil nowadays, though, is lacking the nutrients and the bacteria that we need. So even our soil isn't the same soil that we had 50 years ago. So I hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm just going to eat healthy. I don't need to take a probiotic. I'm just going to eat yogurt and pickles or kimchi or whatever. But guys, the soil that we have is not even the same soil. So we're not even getting the same bacteria that we did 50 years ago. Stress, of course, poor diet, that's a big culprit. Sugar, we'll talk about that a little bit later. All the artificial chemicals, all of that throws off this gut balance. The other thing I found really interesting, staying inside, because a lot more people nowadays, think about it, people are inside. We're on our computers. You know, we keep our front door locked. We don't let the kids go outside and play and run the neighborhood like we used to 20, 30 years ago. And we're too clean. As a society, we have this obsession with antibacterial soaps and lotions and squirts and all that kind of stuff. That is actually harming us. And if you look further into the research, they'll tell you, one, quit using those things because you're killing off the good stuff. Get a dog. dogs have actually been shown to improve your good bacteria and make you healthier because of them bringing in the bacteria. And let your kids play. When you have babies, don't squirt that antibacterial stuff on them 5 times a day. And it's funny because I used to work with a guy, and he literally would buy the Costco size antibacterial stuff and keep it on his desk. And he was a little OCD, like he literally was squirting that stuff probably every hour. He was always sick. He was the guy always calling in sick. And finally we told him, we're like, it's the antibacterial stuff. You're killing off all of that good bacteria. So all of these things throw off the balance. Antibiotics are a big one. They deserve their own slide. Now, they are essential most of the times and necessary. Like you need antibiotics if you get sick, but they alter the gut ecosystem. They completely wipe everything out. They also irritate the bowels. So a lot of people on antibiotics have diarrhea, but when the bowels are irritated, that allows pathogens to actually grow and multiply. Now, this statistics I found said that by the age of 18, the average healthy child has had between 10 and 20 prescribed antibiotics. You know, a lot of babies have them in the hospital. Adelaide, I can't even count how many antibiotics she was on when she was like under a year old. But one round of antibiotics, and so one round is usually what, between like 7 and 10 days, that can throw off the gut flora for an entire year. And it can take an entire year to get that balance back. So when we tell people to stay on Plexus for 90 days, we mean it. And to really get better, you need to be on it for a year or more. And that's why we keep saying, those of us who have been consistent, so I've been consistent now for 2 years, you really do keep feeling better. Like you really do keep noticing all of these little things and you just feel better and better. And that's why, because our guts are so out of balance, it is going to take time to get that back into balance and to repair the damage we've done. So not to get too, I'm going to show a couple slides here. One of the graphics has a leaky gut, but if you can imagine your intestines, right, it's actually lined with all of these bacteria, and they kind of are, they do a protective barrier. Now it's dominated by the good bacteria. But the good bacteria controls all the other microbes. So when you're in balance, the good bacteria protects us against parasites, viruses, toxins, fungus. So it's almost like a physical barrier, if you can think of it that way. It also, though, has an antibiotic type quality that it actually helps to fight off viruses. That, though, is when it's in balance. So when it's out of balance, opportunistic bacteria, yeast, candida, viruses, parasites, they actually start to take over and they multiply rapidly, very rapidly. That's what they do. They're like the space invaders on the video game, right? Once they start multiplying, then you just can't control them and you're overtaken by them. And once they do move in, it's really difficult to get rid of them. That's why ProBio 5 is so effective, because it actually kills them off. There isn't much out there that kills them off. You can increase the good, you can hope to crowd out the bad, you can hope to starve out the bad, but the only way really to get rid of it is to actually kill that off. So and this is what leads to what you've heard of as a leaky gut. And so this is a picture. It's gross, I know, but I put it in there. As those bad bacteria multiply, and those yeast and the fungus takes over, it actually perforates the lining of your intestine and it damages the cells. These little holes then allow those unwanted toxins and that fungus and those viruses and everything to enter your bloodstream. It's now the protective barrier we talked about is gone. There's all these little holes. And so those toxins then start entering the bloodstream. That's what a leaky gut is. When you hear somebody talk about a leaky gut, it's because the protective barrier in your gut has a leak in it, and these toxins are entering your bloodstream. So how does your body react? Once those toxins enter the bloodstream, your body naturally is going to do whatever the heck it can to get rid of those toxins, to get rid of that fungus, right? Now, initially, the process our body is supposed to go through, it detoxes through the liver. You hear a lot of people say, oh, I don't need to detox. Our body does that naturally. Well, it does. However, when you have an overgrowth of all these microbes and the fungus, it's too much. It's an overflow, and it actually blocks the detox pathways through the liver. Those toxins are then carried into the bloodstream, all right, and they're released in other places. So they're released in the lungs. This is where people get asthma and other breathing issues. It's released through the skin. So psoriasis, eczema, rashes, yeast infections, acne. This is why you've seen that chart of signs of candida overgrowth, of signs of yeast overgrowth. This is why it varies. You can have somebody who has a leaky gut and they have skin issues. Somebody else has a leaky gut and they have an autoimmune disease response. It's because their body is getting their toxins out a different way than the person next door. It can come out through the urine. So yeast infections, UTIs. It also can come out through any of the mucous membranes. So this is where we get irritable bowel syndrome, colitis, Crohn's, yeast infections. All of these things are those toxins coming out. Now, the thing about it is, not only is it a sign of a leaky gut, this is what makes us sick, all these toxins in your bloodstream. We know, though, that as we kill them off, some of these signs are going to be exacerbated and they're going to get worse before they actually get better. This is just, oh, got that title thing on there, get rid of that. This is just a quick little graphic to show you a healthy gut versus a leaky gut. And you can see inside the cells, it's just compromised. And these are those little holes that we talked about that bad bacteria has created. And now all of these bugs and all of these bad things are getting into your bloodstream, things that aren't supposed to be there. It activates that immune response. It causes inflammation, food sensitivities, you name it. That's what happens. We get sick. So here are all those things we've seen that are directly correlated to a leaky gut. And it amazes me, some of these things that you've heard about for decades, a leaky gut either causes it directly or is significantly tied to it and is responsible for a lot of those functions. So that's why if you know anybody who has a lot of these, healing your gut is key. So how do you fix it? How do you fix a leaky gut? One, you got it. It's diet related. You definitely can change your diet. Sugar is a big one, guys, like big, big, big. Sugars and fake sugars. And here's why. The fungus actually feeds off the sugar. So it's going to multiply quicker. So anytime we have sugar, or wine, that's a big one too. You are just increasing and making the conditions in your gut great for the bad stuff to multiply. And the other thing about fake sugar is it actually raises your glucose levels. So a lot of people are like, well, I do low sugar, to keep my blood sugar balanced. No, the fake stuff, aspartame, sucralose, all of those artificial chemicals, it raises your glucose levels. And then your body has a response to where it actually thinks its glucose is increased. And then you're going to have even more of those microbes multiplying. Obviously, some of the suggestions you'll find when people say, how do I fix my leaky gut? They tell you to avoid antibiotics and anti-inflammatories, but sometimes you just can't, right? Sometimes you need an antibiotic because you're sick. Well, you can take probiotics. That's what we do. Probiotics increase the good bacteria, but they still don't get rid of the bad. That's why you need to kill off the bad stuff. That's why we have the triplex. And I didn't want to get too far into a training on the triplex. There was a great one the other day, a Lunch and Learn on Team Taylor. But basically, the reason Plexus is so effective on all of these is we're different than other probiotics that just increase the good bacteria. Especially the probiotics that have to be refrigerated. Those actually never reach the gut. They never change the flora because they die and they don't survive through the stomach acid. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If they can't survive outside of your refrigerator, how are they going to survive 98.6 degrees all the way down into the intestinal tract to do what they need to do? That's why a lot of those fancy refrigerated probiotics have like 900 billion CFUs. They have to bump up the number to increase the odds that some of them are actually going to make it to the gut. Plexus doesn't. Ours are shelf stable. It's actually made to not even work and release until it gets to the gut. But we have two things that the other ones don't. We have digestive enzymes, which is key. Chitosanase is the one. I heard somebody pronounce it differently the other day, so I don't know if that's the correct way, but chitosanase is what breaks through the cellular wall of that fungus and the fungal overgrowth. And then our antifungal comes in and kills it off. That's why, I'm going to go ahead and stop share here, guys. That's why you hear people, and if you're new, we can't, per the FDA, we're not allowed to talk about diagnoses. But that's why you hear people say, I don't have allergies anymore because of Plexus, or I no longer have hypothyroidism, or my levels are better, or I don't need my sinus medication, or my Crohn's is gone, my IBS is gone, I'm off my RA medication. It's because we're getting rid of that fungus overgrowth that's making us sick. So, do you guys have any questions? I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.